my foot's falling asleep. My foot's falling asleep. Ow, 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 ow. Why did I do this? Hey guys, it's Michaela back again with another video, and it is the beginning of March, which means it is time to do a February 2020 reading wrap up. So February was a little bit busier for me than January was, which means I didn't have quite as much time to read. I went to a Theo Katzman concert with my mom in Jacksonville, which was like a ton of fun. It was one of the best nights of my life. And then I also got to see Rob Gronkowski, former tight end with the New England Patriots, when he came to Tallahassee. Insert footage here, I guess. I also just like watched a lot more TV in February than I did in January, which is actually weird to think about considering of how much fucking Bones I watched in January. Like an absurd amount of Bones. But I still managed to get 13 books in, which I don't think is that bad, and so those 13 books are what I'm going to talk about today. During the month of January, I didn't really have very many books that stood out to me as spectacular or terrible, books that I wanted to really like sit down and talk about, with the only real exception of DEEPLIGHT, which I will get to in a little bit. There were actually a couple towards the end of the month that I did actually want to talk about some more, but because it was so close to just doing this wrap up, I got lazy and just decided to talk about them all at once. I've had a long day of watching the Great British Bake Off and doing paperwork at my desk, so I'm just gonna jump right into it. The first book I finished was What I Like About You by Marissa Cantor. This book is a YA book about a girl named, oh my god, I'm so bad at names, guys. Hallie? Okay, I don't know if it's supposed to be pronounced Hallie or Haley, but it's spelled like Hallie, like Halle Berry, so I'm just gonna assume it's Hallie. It's about this girl named Hallie who is like really introverted and she really loves to read, and she has this online persona of Kels who creates cupcakes based on the books that she loves. And she has, you know, a ton of online friends, but not really any IRL friends because she and her family move around a lot. But they move to this new place, and she finds out when she gets there that one of the new friends that she's making at school is also her online best friend and guy she's had a crush on. His name is Nash. And so now she has to decide, is she going to tell him who she is or just like forge this new friendship? This book is Eliza and Her Monsters. It's the exact same book. Like the details are different, but it's the exact same book. Girl has online identity, someone she knows online comes into her IRL life, and she has to figure it out. It's the same book, except Eliza and Her Monsters is better. This isn't bad by any means, but it's the same book. There are a lot of things I really did like about this. For one, it's an incredibly Jewish book. A lot of the characters in this book are Jewish, and there's lots of time spent in synagogue. I'm not a Jewish person, but my best friend is Jewish, and I have a lot of love for the Jewish community, so I was really excited to see so much Jewish culture baked into this. That was really cool. One criticism that I have of this type of story, which is, you know, person has online life that is separate and secret from real life, and you know, the two are starting to collide and the person is doing everything they can to like maintain that boundary. One thing I don't like about this story is that like inevitably the two lives collide and the truth comes out either on a small scale or a macro scale or both. And people get pissed at the person for having this like secret online life. And I just don't think that's realistic for today's age. I think especially when they're minors, like I think it's like pretty reasonable and understandable for a person to have anxiety or just general caution about having a public and yet secret online persona. Like when people in her life, Hallie's life, start to find out that she is this person Kels and that she didn't tell them, they get like kind of irrationally angry at her. I hesitate to even call it lying, because there is a sense of self-preservation, of protection, that is not unreasonable or uncalled for. And I think it's also understandable to be hurt, you know, by someone who has a secret like this and doesn't tell you. I think it's okay to have that question like, well, how close are we? That's fine. But people get like so angry in these types of books and these types of stories. And like, I just don't think that's called for. Like, obviously, you know, in a perfect world, we could all be open and we could all be like, yes, I also do this thing online that I'm very successful at and it's very popular, but that's an online thing and this isn't a real life thing, you know, and it's not that, it's not a perfect world. But I think every time someone new in this book found out and like got so pissed off, I was like, could you just like chill for a second and not make this about you? Like, I felt like this is Hallie, whatever her name is, it was her choice to make and she made it. And I don't know, I feel like the essential drama of this book doesn't have to be that dramatic. And again, the book is just Eliza and her monsters. So if I had to choose between the two, I would pick that, especially because the whole like issues of social anxiety and depression that sort of are in both, and Eliza and her monsters just does it better. So I gave this 3 stars. It's not bad, but read Eliza and her monsters instead. Next book I am very excited to talk about, but I'm not going to talk about in too much detail because it is the final book in a trilogy, and that is The Hand on the Wall by Maureen Johnson. This is the 3rd and final book in the Truly Devious series, which is a series I really, really love. I love Maureen Johnson as a person. I first got introduced to her when she guest brothered on Brotherhood 2.0 a million years ago, dating myself quite a lot. I have to admit, I was never the biggest fan of her writing. I was never the biggest fan of her books. I think before the Truly Devious series, I had read 3 other books of hers. 2 of them I didn't really like, and one of them I thought was okay. The one I thought was okay was the London Ghost series. I only read the first book, but I liked it well enough, and the other 2 I don't remember what they were, but I wasn't a huge fan. So I was nervous when Truly Devious came out. I had fallen in love with her again through her podcast Says Who, so I gave it a shot, and I really did love this series. I think the second book wasn't entirely necessary. I think you could have taken the important bits from book 2 and just kind of like divvied them up between book 1 and book 2 and had this be a duology. I don't think the 3rd book was needed. The middle book of the 3 was needed. But this was a great ending. Lots of surprises in here. I certainly did not predict who the killer was, so that was really fun. I'm not really going to say much more about this, but it's a really solid series. I highly recommend it. It's fun. They're not particularly, they're not short books, but they're not difficult reads, so you can kind of get through them relatively quickly. Yeah, solid series. I recommend. I gave this book 4 stars, which is what I think I gave the other 2. I can't remember for sure, but like it's a 4-star series. I recommend it. Okay, so the next book I considered making a full video about because I very much didn't like it. But I kind of just didn't want to, so I didn't. I was actually excited about this one when I got it at YALLFest because I traded for it. I had gotten the 4th book in the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series, which I have the first one, but I never read the ones after that, so having the 4th one wasn't really going to help me. And a young boy got this. He was probably like 11-ish, and you could tell he didn't want it. So I very quickly made the trade, and I was like, congratulations, you got the 4th book in a series that who knows if you read. But I was excited because it looked good, and I was disappointed. The book is Girl Save the World in this one by Ash Parsons, and this is a zombie apocalypse story. The premise of it I think is kind of whimsical and fun. So the main characters, again, names. Do I know them? Of course not. Okay, so the main character is June, and she and her best friends Siggy and Imani are huge fans of zombies in general, and then of this one particular zombie show called Human Wasteland, which is essentially The Walking Dead. And a convention, a ZombieCon, is coming to their town in Georgia, and so they're super excited and they go, and while they are there, an actual zombie outbreak happens, but it takes a while for people to believe it because it just obviously doesn't make sense. So on paper, great idea. I think that's funny and I like that. The execution was a different story. I had a lot of problems with this book. The first was that it takes forever to get started. So this is how big the book is, and if I'm not mistaken, it's 150 pages until it starts, roughly. The zombie apocalypse, we get the first inklings of it about 100 pages in, but it's like over 150 pages before like the plot really starts to happen. There is so much time spent just talking about this convention, and it is incredibly boring. It's tedious. It has all of the intrigue of just walking around a convention hall. And I get the idea to set the scene, and there are some things that are set up in the beginning that are important later. For example, they encounter a group of survivalists who talk about something that then becomes relevant when the actual zombie apocalypse happens. Fine. I don't think it needed to be upwards of 150, 200 pages before we get to the plot of the story, the zombie apocalypse. It just takes forever to get started. Another huge problem I had with this book was that the writing was intensely childish. From the beginning, we are told that June and her friends are talking about the SATs, talking about early admissions to colleges, college applications. They are very much seniors in high school, and yet many times throughout this book, I had to pause and ask myself, are they 12? Because they talk like children. It's some of the most juvenile writing. Both June's narration and the dialogue is just incredibly childish. I could not believe these were people about to go off to college. You know, sometimes YA gets a bit of flack for teens speaking like adults, which I'm personally a fan of. I always think dialogue should be aspirational, that we should always write a little bit above maybe what we should, because I'm a dialogue whore. I love dialogue. But this is insanely young. So here's an example. I made an attempt to sticky note things. I only made 2 notes, and I'll talk about the other one in a second because I'm bad at tapping. But here's an example of the type of writing I'm talking about. I don't even know if it's like the best example, but it's one I thought to mark at the time. So it's just, I feel safer. I feel stronger. I feel like a better person with my friends around me because they're so awesome. And if they like me, it's just, I'm all right, right? Or at least it camouflages how not cool I actually am, comparatively. Imani and Siggy and Blair too, before everything happened. They all hated it if I say that sort of thought out loud, but it's just the way I feel. Ugh, next year is gonna suck so hard. How am I supposed to just start over? 6th grade was bad enough when we were split into different teams, and somehow I was the only one who got on the Cool Cats team, and they all got flamingos. What the fuck? I don't even know what that means, the last part. It's never explained, the whole team thing. I don't know what that means. But it just, everything about that screams someone just starting high school to me. But they're not. They're talking about SATs and colleges and where they're gonna go to school next year. Like, they're very clearly seniors in high school, but they don't talk like it, and it drives me crazy. There's also lots of sort of performative social justice conversation going on. I think, you know, a zombie story is a good medium for having some discussions, some sort of like progressive discussions. So I'm not saying that this isn't the venue for it, but it's just one of those where, sort of like if you saw my review for Brown Girl Ghosted, it felt like just like lip service to progressive social justice warrior feminist talk. It wasn't actually, it was just clunky. And I do, like I said, I tabbed 2 things, and this is one of them. And so here's an example of just like saying the thing instead of showing the thing, I guess. He looks at me, and his smile is the exact one that used to make me feel special, the same one that I used to think of as one that was just for me. Then I realized it was just the way he looked at any girl. It's like his eyes were saying, "You're not like the other girls." But I am. I am the other girls. I'm exactly, wonderfully, just like all the other girls, jerk. So stop negging us, for once. Just stop it. Ugh. Like, good sentiment, but first of all, that's not what negging is. And second of all, it's so clunkily put in there, like, hey, I'm a progressive too. I know that all girls are awesome. And it doesn't add anything to June's character. It doesn't add anything to the relationship with the person she's talking about. It's not good. It's not good writing, guys. Overall, the writing is just really, really bad in this. One point in this book's favor is that I am a person who I cannot visualize action scenes. I've never been good at it. I wasn't good at it in like reading Harry Potter and like the big battle at the end. I can't really picture that in my head. It's just not a talent I have. But I thought that Ash Parsons did like a fairly good job whenever there was like a scuffle happening with zombies, of at least like generally being able to imagine what was happening. like, I'm not, like I said, I'm not very visually minded. So I was never like, what's happening with these zombies? Who's going on? Why are people dead? Like, I got the gist of it. So that's hard to do for me. And Ash did it. Said Ash like we're friends. Like, I don't fucking know this person. I guess ultimately what I feel about this, in addition to just the writing being really bad, is I just don't think it had to be this long. If you actually boil the plot of the story down to like its most basic parts, this could have been a novella. Like, it's not a complicated plot. Like, zombie outbreak happens, you know, alliances form and break up, and some people die, and then, you know, it's over. Not very complex. Most of the time I was just like kind of waiting for it to be over. So I gave this 2 stars. I just didn't have fun. I didn't have fun reading it, so eh. This next book is one that really snuck up on me. For the first like 50-ish pages, I thought I wasn't going to like this, and by the end I was like, I really enjoyed it. And that book is Unscripted by Nicole Kronzer. This is a story about a girl named Zelda who loves improv. She's been doing improv for like quite a long time, and she and her brother both do it, and she's gotten an opportunity to go to like this really elite exclusive improv camp for high schoolers, and she and her brother both go. This book has a lot to say about the boys culture that is improv comedy and comedy in general. I am not a comedian, but I listen to a ridiculous number of podcasts, many of which are hosted by comedians or people who are active in comedy circles. And from what I have learned from them and their experiences, the type of toxic, hyper-masculine, misogynistic behavior that takes place in this book felt very accurate to me. None of it felt exaggerated at all. Like I said at the beginning, I think Nicole Kronzer just took a little bit of time to get her feet under her, because at first I thought the writing was going to be, again, a very clunky, like, SJW, and I hate saying that as like a derogatory term, but like that type of performative language. That's what I thought this book was going to be, and it didn't end up being that. It shifted gears very quickly. Zelda's at this camp, and she sort of gains the attention of one of the youngest counselor, who's 20 and she is 17, and he takes a special interest in her, which at first seems really great and then quickly becomes not great. And that is such an interesting dynamic, and that is portrayed so well and with so much grace and respect. It's so easy to have, it would have been so easy to make that a forbidden romance, but when a 20 and a 17-year-old, where one is in a position of power, that's not romantic, that's abusive. And that comes through sort of exactly how it should. You know, this book pays a lot of respect to the choices that women and girls have to make when they're in male-dominated spaces, especially when those spaces are important for their own personal development. Like, Zelda very much wants to be a professional comedian. She wants to work in Second City or IO or Saturday Night Live. Like, that's what she wants. And so she has to make decisions like, am I going to call out this behavior and have these people turn against me? Am I going to stand up for myself and seem like a nag, seem like I have no sense of humor, when all of this is supposed to be about humor? It's really wonderfully done. Part of it is also a little bit at the end, it feels maybe a little bit of an idealistic ending, you know, how we wish things would go. Not necessarily all of it, but I mean, it is a YA book, so things turn out like generally okay, and I wonder if that would be the case in real life. I don't know, maybe it would. Maybe if this were a real thing that really happened, it would turn out exactly the same way. Although I do think it is good to end on a note of hope, which it does. My only kind of really big critique about this is that the jokes aren't very funny. Some of them are, but generally speaking, like, the things that are supposed to make I think they're supposed to make us laugh, and they don't. Obviously, we're describing improv here, and improv is not just jokes, but it's also a visual medium. But a lot of the things that are either described or like the jokes are literally written down, I just didn't find very many of them to be funny at all. I feel like I'm hard to impress when it comes to humor. I am sort of a comedy snob for no reason. I have no right to be, but I am. So maybe it's just me, but I just didn't find any of the jokes funny, which I feel like when you're writing, even though the topics that are talked about are very serious, when you are having a book set in the world of comedy, I want to also laugh, and I didn't really laugh at all in this. So that's something to consider. I gave this 4 stars. I definitely recommend it. I did like it. And I think it's a good one to give to, you know, teen girls who are oftentimes find themselves in male-dominated spaces, because this has some really smart things to say. The next book I'm not going to talk about a lot because I made an entire video about it. That is DEEPLIGHT by Frances Hardinge. Still don't know. Still haven't looked it up. It's been 2 weeks. Haven't looked it up. This is weird and creative and beautifully written and such a unique piece of art. 5 stars. Please go read it. Watch my review. I talk more about it, but this is so good. So the next book I have a lot of sort of confused feelings about. Ultimately, I did like it. I did enjoy it. But it's kind of a complicated book, and so I have complicated feelings about it. It is LOBIZONA by Romina Garber. This is a story of Manu, a teenage girl who is living undocumented with her mother in Miami. They came from Argentina when she was a baby, I believe, and so she's never been back, but she can, they haven't become documented yet. This book is kind of hard to talk about because it kind of feels like everything is a spoiler, but also like maybe nothing is a spoiler. I don't know. So Manu is very different in that her pupils, the pupils of her eyes, are in the shape of stars. So she can't really ever go out or be seen in the daylight because that is something that will obviously draw attention to her, and she and her mother can't afford to have attention on them because they are undocumented and they don't want to be deported. But at one point, Manu finds herself fleeing Miami for reasons I won't get into for spoilers, but she stumbles upon this community of people who are just like her, who have eyes that look just like hers, and she's like, whoa, did not know this was a thing. Basically from there, she discovers the world of essentially witches and werewolves, where boys are werewolves and girls are witches, and it gets kind of complicated. I will fully admit that by halfway to 2/3 of the way through this book, I gave up on trying to understand the lore. It is incredibly complicated, and very specific. It's very specific. There are like rules, and obviously those rules get broken because otherwise that wouldn't be interesting. And Manu is really the one to be shaking things up in this world. But it's just so, there's this whole other dimension where the wolves and the witches go during the full moon, and they can only access it to the full moon because it's dangerous to live there full time, which is never super explained why. There's very much like a political thing going on. This is the first book in the series, by the way, so I'm confident that more will be explained in later books, and I definitely do want to read them. But what made this book interesting was the people and sort of Manu's status in this new culture that she has found, because like I said, boys are werewolves and the girls are witches, and spoiler alert, she's a werewolf as indicated by the title. So that shakes things up, and she tries to hide it and it doesn't always work. What was interesting was not the lore, was not the magic. That was interesting, but that wasn't the focus. The focus was Manu went from being essentially an illegal immigrant to being kind of the same thing in this new world that she's just discovered. Like, she can never be safe. All she wants is to find a place where like she belongs and she can be, and she tries so hard to carve this space for herself, and like that is what is interesting about this book. Not, like I said, not like the other stuff isn't interesting, not like the witches and the magic and the werewolves and you know the alternate universe. Not that that's not interesting, it's just very complicated, and I kind of just got tired of trying to follow it all, so I just let it go. I let myself not understand it, and I was like, I'm just here for the ride. And once I kind of let it go and just really focused on what was going on in Manu's life, I enjoyed it a lot more. I really enjoyed all of the character work in this. I thought all of the characters were incredibly interesting, and I never really knew where Manu stood with each of them until you know, the book progressed and we got to really dig in deep to this plot. I, you know, definitely have characters who I really like and characters who annoy the shit out of me and characters who I still don't really trust but kind of have to. And that's some excellent character work. I gave this 4 stars. I did enjoy it quite a lot. I'm looking forward to the next book in the series. And I hope by then I maybe have a better grasp of the lore, because the lore is good. I do like it. It's just complicated and it's a lot. This isn't an overly big book, so it's a lot thrown at you at once. So I'm hoping by the next one I have a better handle on things. Our next book is The Summer of Impossibilities by Rachel Allen. This is the story of 4 teenage girls whose moms were best friends in college and now are coming together one summer to a lake house that one of them owns, and they're bringing their daughters with them. So these girls are being thrust into each other's company, essentially. 2 of the girls, Skylar and Scarlett, are twins. Skylar is a softball player and she is hiding how bad, she has arthritis, and she is hiding from kind of as many people as she can how bad her arthritis has gotten. And Scarlett is just incredibly angry. She doesn't want to be here. She doesn't want to be in this cabin with these girls. And she's just sort of a very angry person in general. We also have Ellie, who is a Muslim girl who loves tennis. She's really good at tennis, but she has had an incredibly difficult time making friends. She's just a very sincere, kind of overeager person, and all she wants is just to have friends and for people to like her, and she's sort of clinging really desperately to that. And the 4th girl is Amelia Grace, who is a very devout Christian, very active in her church community, and she also happens to be a lesbian and has had a very long time crush on Scarlett. They used to be friends when they were younger. And she is facing ostracization. Again, trying this word that I can't say. She's being shunned by her church community because she has been outed, and so that's kind of what she's dealing with. So the 4 of them come together, and it's a story of how their friendship burgeons over the course of this summer and how they come to know themselves and each other better. And it's a good friendship story. I will say that from the bat, I was pretty put off by Amelia Grace's story. Amelia Grace is a lesbian. I felt that her story, at least like the first half of it, was not written by a queer person. I don't know if Rachel Allen is queer. I do know, I looked it up, she's has a husband. That doesn't mean she's not queer. She's just not married to a woman. But there were lots of things that just like kind of, that didn't make sense and didn't feel realistic to me. For one, I mean, this happens really early on, so I don't think that's a spoiler, but she's outed because she's behind the curtain. They're about to put on some kind of pageant at her church, and she accidentally says that she has a crush on someone with she, her pronouns to the girl next to her, and the girl next to her is like, it's fine, like, you know, it's fine if you like girls, I don't mind. And then this girl just like kisses her out of the blue, and then like the curtain comes up and they're seen kissing, and that feels so like cartoonish. And I feel like if you're a queer person who is in the closet, that's not the kind of mistake you make. It reminds me of in Simon and the versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, or the Love, Simon book. I never saw the movie, I only read the book. When he's sort of found out because he leaves his email up on a school computer, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but if you're in the closet, you are paranoid to a degree where that mistake would never get made. I wasn't even in the closet for like ever, and I would never have made that fucking mistake. Like, that's just not, when you were as invested as Simon was in maintaining your, you know, outward appearance of being straight, you don't make that kind of Bush League move. And that's kind of how it felt in this. I was confused about whether or not Amelia Grace was in the closet or not, because she seemed like genuinely surprised by how vitriolic her church community was when she was outed. But she was also like purposely not telling people. Like, she had only told her youth pastor and no one else. It's just not really clear what she expected from her church community. It's not, I don't think a denomination is ever given. And as someone who used to be a queer in a Christian environment, it didn't feel realistic. It just didn't. One of the other sources of tension in Amelia Grace's life is that her mom is not immediately accepting of the fact that she is gay. And again, she's kind of taken aback by that. And I feel like you would know. I feel like the surprise is usually when a kid comes out and the parent isn't freaking out. So when she's outed and her mom, like, is not cool, she, like, it's one thing to be hurt by it, but she was, like, genuinely bewildered by this. And I'm like, how did you not know? Like, I feel like you would, I feel like I knew. Like, I predicted what various people's in my life reaction would be when they found out, and I was right on almost all counts. I was right on all counts. So I don't know, it felt to me like the character of Amelia Grace hadn't put any thought into the fact that she likes girls, and then just, like, happened. I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say. I feel like Rachel Allen did not put into Amelia Grace the hours of thought about being queer that queer kids have. I feel like the character of Amelia Grace just treated it as this no big deal, and then, oh my god, it turned out to be a really big deal. But when you're a queer kid, especially a queer kid in a conservative environment, you're thinking about it all of the time. And it felt like Amelia Grace had never thought about it once. So it didn't make sense to me. So one thing I really couldn't stand about this book, shifting perspectives is hard for me. I have a hard time remembering who's talking when we have multiple narrators. But this wasn't even just like, you know, one chapter would be told from one girl's point of view and the next chapter would be a different girl. You would have it in multiple times per chapter, the perspective was changed, and it was very confusing. Like, if you take a look, so we've got Amelia Grace, Scarlet, and then, oh my god, turn the page, and then Ellie here, and then Skylar here, all in the course of like 4 pages. We have 4 perspectives. That was incredibly confusing. There were times it was shifting more than that. It was too much. I had a very hard time remembering who was speaking. I could never really feel settled in any one girl's story or point of view. Even when I knew who was speaking, I didn't always remember like what their thing was. Like, I was sometimes like, okay, are we in the arthritis storyline now? Or are we in the making friends storyline now? Or are we in the I'm angry at the world? Like, it was just so complicated and shifted so much. I never felt settled, and that made it very hard for me to really relate to any of the girls at all. I will say that I liked all of the girls as much as I could get to know them. There weren't any who stood out as being overly just unlikable. Scarlett's definitely like the angriest and the hardest to read, but like her character to me actually kind of felt the most realistic with what she was dealing with. Actually, yeah, I think in general the twins, so Skylar, the girl with arthritis, and Scarlett, the girl who's just angry at the world, the two of them felt the most real to me. I enjoyed their plots more than the other two. Not that I didn't enjoy the others, I just enjoyed them more. I just found another example. Look at that. So this is Skylar, Scarlett, Skylar, Scarlett. That's too much. That's too much. I give this book 3 stars. It was fine. I didn't dislike it. I just thought it could have been a little bit better. It could have been a little bit less confusing. And the queer representation, even though by the end I was just like, oh my god, I love lesbians so much. And the queer writing could have been better. Next one is one that I almost made a full video about, but I finished it really close to the end of the month, so I just decided not to. I was so excited to read this book because I got to have a little chat with the author 2 times during Y'all Fest. It was so cute. We got in the line for her signing, and the line ended up being like, I think way longer than she thought it was going to be, because when she finally showed up, she was very emotional when she saw how many people were there. It ended up being like, we had to break into 2 lines. There were so many people and they just couldn't fit us in the space. The book is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. This was really fun and lovely. I was really scared I was really scared that I wasn't gonna like it because, you know, the two times that I got to talk to Namina Forna during Yellfest, I told her how excited I was, and I told her I was like, I'm sure I'm going to love it. She even signed it. I hope you love this book. Like, she so genuinely wanted people to like it. She's such like this ball of sunshine. I adored her so much. Oh my gosh. And I was afraid I wasn't going to, and I didn't know what I was going to do if I didn't, but I did, and I'm so happy that I liked it. This book tells the story of Decca, who lives in a village, and in this society that they live in, every girl, when they turn 16, or like the year they turn 16, have this blood test done, and basically they are cut, and if they bleed gold, they are considered to be demons, and they are oftentimes like murdered or shunned from society or sold. And of course, you know, Decca, she's the main character, so she goes through this, right, and her blood runs gold, and they try to kill her. The people in her town try to kill her, and they can't. She keeps coming back to life. They try to kill her like a bunch of different ways, and it doesn't work. So she's being tortured by constantly being murdered, but she can't die, and or she dies and then she comes back, and she's eventually rescued by this woman who in the book they call White Hands, and because they never find out her name. And she is taken away to be a member of an elite warrior squad, because she can't die, and because the Gilded Ones, the ones who like her bleed gold, actually are like incredibly strong and incredibly fast and make really good warriors. They are being trained to be warriors against the Death Streaks, which are these like mysterious, grotesque monsters that are sort of invading the land. They're very violent and very scary. In my head, they're like partially the monsters from like The Quiet Place, partially like Slender Man, like, I don't know, I kind of just like, I imagine them as like spider people, like long limbed, and I have no idea if that's right, but that's just what was in my head. But Decca is a little bit special from the rest of her Alaki friends. Alaki, by the way, are these girls who bleed gold. And she's a little bit special in that she has this ability to sense when the death streaks are near, and she also finds out that she can command them. She didn't mean to, but she can like tell them to stop, tell them to like let themselves be killed or kill each other. So she becomes invaluable in this fight against the death streaks. But as she starts to gain more access and gain more power and gain more training, she starts learning some more information about the power structure and what's happening to the Alaki and what's going on with the death streaks, and sort of a conspiracy unravels that's like super cool and really enjoyable. I kept guessing a lot, and I had a fun time figuring out what was coming next. According to Goodreads, this is the first in a series, but I was actually kind of surprised by that. I thought this ended on sort of a final note, not like as in the story was over, but like I genuinely don't know what's going to come next, like how the story is going to progress from here, because things like more or less got figured out, or at least the truth came out, and I don't want to say too much, but I will absolutely be reading the second book in the series because I did have a lot of fun reading this, but I don't really know what comes after this. It felt pretty settled to me at the end. So yes, please go pick this up. It's a really fun, exciting, exhilarating read, and I had a really fun time living in this world. I gave this 4 stars. I really had a good time. So this next book got like 2.5 stars on Goodreads, at least it did when I rated it just a couple of days ago, and I want to know what y'all are smoking because this book was so much fun. The book is The Circus Rose by Betsy Cornwell, and it is, according to the back, a retelling of Snow White and Rose Red, which I thought I knew, but I did not recognize anything of a plot in this from anything I've read before, so I guess I don't know what that is. The story is of twin girls, Rosie and Ivory, who have grown up in the circus. Their mother owns a circus, and that's all they've really ever known. Most of the story is told from Rosie's point of view, and Rosie's very much like a behind-the-scenes stagehand type, and her sister Ivory is a tightrope trapeze artist. What I super loved about this is all of Rosie's parts were told in prose, but all of Ivory's parts were told in verse. Like, she kind of only knows how to think in verse. I just find that like cool and exciting. So this story sort of really kicks into gear when the circus lands in this one town. This is sort of the town that generally the twins were born in. So it's kind of like their first time coming back. And this radical fundamentalist religious organization starts protesting the circus, saying it's like a den of debauchery and things like that. It'll bring sin to the world. And things get serious from there. There is an incident during one of Ivory's performances, and then members of the circus start going missing. And it's clearly not a very big book. I think I read it in a day, maybe two. It's a very quick read because even though it's like this big, parts of it are told in verse, so you can get through it fairly quickly. But it's just a tight little adventure. Like it's exactly as long as it needs to be to tell the kind of story it wants to tell. There's no fat to cut. Like it's I didn't want any more. Like I think it's perfectly paced. And beautifully written. The writing is just stunning. Probably my favorite aspect of this is the character of Tam. Tam is Fae from the land of Fairy, and Fee is non-binary. So from how it's described, all Fae are like they don't have gender. I don't know if they have sex, but I do know that they don't. Oh, sorry, they don't. Yeah, they kind of don't have gender. They don't have sex. Like every Fae can mate with any other Fae. They have their own pronoun system. So the pronouns are, I was pronouncing them fee fur because it seemed to be like he or she and then her, so I just made the sound like that, but maybe it's fey fur, I don't know, but I was pronouncing it fee fur. So I think this is the first time I read a book with non-binary representation that had a pronoun system that wasn't they them. There's nothing wrong with they them, obviously. I know a bunch of people who use they them pronouns, but you don't see different types of pronoun systems used, and it wasn't hard to get on board with it. The only thing that was confusing is that the very first time the fee for pronoun was used, it was at the beginning of a sentence, so fee was capitalized, so I thought it was someone's name, and I couldn't figure out who this character was that had never shown up before until like the next sentence when it was used again and not capitalized, and that's when it clicked. Oh, this is Tam's pronoun, never mind. Yeah, it was just so exciting to read, to have that like non-binary character in a romantic situation is something I don't know if I've ever read before. This book is hella polyamorous. Like polyamory is everywhere in this book. The Fae are polyamorous, but it's not just that, like humans have started to adopt the policy too. So it's kind of all over the place. There's even like a really sort of extraordinary example of it that I'm not going to spoil. It's an incredibly queer, incredibly progressive, incredibly fun read. Like I said, it is exactly what it needs to be. It's exactly what it wants to be. It sets out to tell a story, and it tells that story, gets out, and I appreciate an economy of words. Not that you would know from these videos, but I gave this 5 stars. I don't know what everyone on Goodreads is so mad about. This was a goddamn delight. I loved it. Last book I am going to talk about before I get to my Marvel comics. I have a lot of feelings about this book. I went back and forth on it a lot. I started in one place and ended up in a different place. The book is They Wish They Were Us by Jessica Goodman. This is a murder mystery that spends a lot of time avoiding the murder mystery. There are essentially 2 main plots to this book. So the first plot is the main character, Jill. She goes to an incredibly elite, very rich prep school on Long Island, and she is a member of the Players, which is essentially a co-ed fraternity. For all intents and purposes, it's a fraternity. They're in high school, but it's a fraternity. Like you have to rush it, like you have to pledge it, you have to rush it, you have to get in, you get hazed. By being a part of this fraternity, it's called the Players. By being a part of it, you get access to like a network of people, but also test prep materials and prior exams and like basically cheating stuff, and like super exclusive parties. It's a fraternity. When Jill was first rushing this fraternity her freshman year, because it's a K through 12 school, but only high schoolers can be in the Players. When she was essentially rushing this fraternity her freshman year, one of the girls she was rushing with, Shayla, who was also her best friend, on initiation night gets murdered, and her boyfriend at the time, Graham, confesses to it, goes to prison. Now it's 3 years later, and Jill is a senior. So she is, at the top of the school, like when her now new best friend is the Toastmaster, or essentially the leader of the players. And Graham's sister reaches out to Jill and says, my brother is innocent. It was a false confession. He didn't kill Shayla. And so now Jill's like, doesn't know what to do with this information. I have for quite a while now been really interested in criminal justice reform and wrongful convictions and false confessions. So when I found out that that's what this book was about, I was really excited. The problem is that it's not what the first half of this book about. The first half of this book is all about the players and sort of the toxicity of this fraternity, and that's fine. I just don't care about that at all. I was incredibly bored. I was like, I'm here to find out if this guy murdered this girl, and if he didn't, who did? Right? That's what I was here for. And that plot doesn't really start until about halfway through the book. The first half is all about the players. I am just not someone who is generally interested in the goings-on of the rich and not famous. Like that, I just don't care. I mean, you can make it interesting. You can make me care. Like I talked about Anna Kay in my January 2020 wrap-up video, and I really enjoyed Anna Kay, but that author made me care about those characters. This author did not make me care about really any of the characters in this book. I didn't care about, I cared about Jill somewhat, but I didn't care about any of her friends. I didn't care about this fraternity. I didn't care about these people. I didn't care about the players. So the whole first half of this book is just about Jill sort of like trying to make the players less toxic, trying to make change, and it just like not working. And I was like so frustrated because I'm like, why aren't we focusing on the kid sitting in juvenile detention right now for a murder he didn't commit? Like that was what I cared about. And yeah, we eventually get there, but like late in the book, once we get to that point and the mystery around Shayla's death starts unraveling, I'm into it. Like it got very good at the end. And yes, the player plotline and the murder plotline do come together, but I just not enough to make me interested in the player part of the plotline. I will say that I did not predict who the true killer was. I made a prediction very early on. I think it was like page 15 or something like that, or it was whenever a character was introduced. When this character was first introduced, I was like, it's them. I was half right. I thought it was them for a reason, because I thought they did this other thing, and I was right that they did the other thing, but I was wrong that they did the murder. But I kind of had a couple guesses as the story progressed, and as I kind of started to realize that maybe I was wrong. I had a couple of guesses, like I thought, oh, maybe it's this person, maybe it's this person. And the person it ended up being was on the list, but wasn't like high on the list, which I think is kind of the sign of a good murder mystery, is like where you can make the guess and you can see where the seeds are planted, but it's not like you're gonna be right off the gate, oh, it's obvious it's for this person. I thought I was clever, and I thought I had figured it out, and I was wrong. So, but yeah, I would say the last like third of this book was really stellar. We learned a lot, not only about what happened to Shayla, but what happened to like other girls and other people in general in the players, both in the past and present. And that I thought was very interesting, and I liked the way a lot of that information was revealed. But because so much of the first half of the book was just spent on, to me, bullshit, I couldn't get over that. Even though by the end I was like, I'm glad I read this, and I am glad I read this. But I ended up only giving it 3 stars, just because I felt, like I said, there's just so much extra shit I didn't need, and I really wanted to focus on the murder. And maybe that's just me, maybe other people really like that whole prep school thing. I never watched Gossip Girl. I don't really know if that's a thing that people really like. Then maybe you'll really like this. I just don't care about that. I don't really care what rich people do. Sorry, I find rich people boring. And that was the same year. I didn't care about what these rich kids were up to. Rich kids are I don't care. But the murder mystery was well done for a murder mystery, especially since it was only like half the book. So it was like an entire murder mystery in like this much of the book. So that's not bad. But like I said, 3 stars, a worthwhile read, especially if you do like prep school rich kid shenanigans. Finally, I'm just going to talk for a little bit about the Marvel comics that I read. As I said in my January wrap-up video, I am working my way through a list of Marvel comics because I really enjoy reading them. I really enjoy reading the comics. This month I read Deadpool Classic Volumes 4 and 5, as well as Volume 1 of the Black Panther 1998. I gave all of them 4 stars. I found them very enjoyable. I've now read Deadpool 1 through 5, Deadpool Classic 1 through 5, and I just found the character Deadpool's character arc to be very interesting. I think it would be done a little bit differently today than it was in the 90s, but still very enjoyable and very complicated. I find Deadpool to be a complicated character and I like him. And then Black Panther was just is so much fun, and so like such radical politics, especially for like the late 90s, I feel like. It's told from Everett Ross's point of view, who's a very Michael J. Fox Spin City type, and yeah, I really enjoyed his character. Some good political commentary in that one. I really like it. I've been recording for an hour and I'm very hungry, so I'm going to stop there. I think I'm going to be starting a new little series soon. I was at the Dollar Tree yesterday and I saw their book section, and they have like a ton of books, like legit books, for $1. And so I, as a snob, my first question is like, why are these books in the dollar store? Do they suck? And then I realized like, I have no idea why these books are in the dollar store or if they suck. So I think I'm gonna do a little review series where I buy books for $1 at the dollar store and then read them and review them and see if they actually should have been $1 or not. So keep an eye out for that. I would be so honored if you were to check out any other video on my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye!